Take a breath. Go ahead. That oxygen in your lungs right now, half of it didn't come from a tree, didn't come from a forest or a rainforest or anything with roots. It came from a single cell floating somewhere in the ocean, smaller than the wavelength of light your eyes used to see. We didn't know it existed until 1986. Honestly, there are 3 octillion of them in the ocean right now, 3 followed by 27 zeros. More cells than stars in the observable universe, times a billion. Yeah. The most important organism on Earth, and we missed it for 200 years of marine biology. Cool. So what does this cell actually do? And what happens to your planet when it stops doing it? Here's what we thought for a very long time. The ocean story was about the big stuff, whales, sharks, coral reefs. The documentary version where charismatic megafauna do dramatic things while a soothing narrator explains why it matters. And it does matter. But the real engine of the ocean isn't a whale, and it's not even close. The real engine fits inside a red blood cell. It's called Prochlorococcus, 0.5 to 0.7 microns in diameter, which is roughly half the width of a single bacterium. So small that no microscope before the 1980s could reliably distinguish it from background noise. For 2 centuries of marine science, the most abundant photosynthetic organism on Earth was hiding in plain sight. In every liter of seawater, you could scoop up roughly 100,000 of them, doing work nobody had assigned and nobody could see. So how did we finally find it? 1986. MIT. A marine microbiologist named Sally Chisholm, everyone calls her Penny, and Robert Olson at Woods Hole. They were using a tool called flow cytometry, which essentially fires a laser at individual cells suspended in fluid and measures the light each cell emits back. The technology was originally designed for medical diagnostics. They repurposed it for seawater, and the seawater lit up. What they were looking at was the most abundant photosynthetic organism on the planet. Billions of years of evolution, and nobody had seen it because nobody had a laser small enough. Yeah. But here's what makes Prochlorococcus more than a fun fact. It produces roughly 50% of all oxygen generated in the ocean, and the ocean produces roughly 50 to 80% of all oxygen on Earth. Do the math. So what does that mean for you? This one cell, invisible, unnamed, unnoticed, is responsible for somewhere between a quarter and nearly half of every breath you take right now while reading this, naturally. And it's not alone. Diatoms, another group of phytoplankton, do the same job through a completely different design. Where Prochlorococcus is soft and tiny, diatoms build walls out of glass, out of silica, actual transparent silica shells with geometric patterns that look like they were designed by an architect with too much time. When diatoms die, those glass shells sink, accumulate on the seafloor over millions of years, compress, and turn to rock. Want examples you'd recognize? The white cliffs of Dover that you see in photos? Dead phytoplankton. Diatomaceous earth, the stuff you put in your swimming pool filter, also dead phytoplankton. A geological layer of corpses, and we use it to clean pools. Cool. But oxygen is just one job. The second job is the one that should genuinely concern every climate scientist on the planet, including the ones you trust. So what's the second job? Phytoplankton absorb CO2 during photosynthesis, and when they die, and they die fast, average lifespan 1 to 7 days, their bodies sink, carrying the carbon down with them past the sunlit zone, past the twilight zone, into the deep where that carbon stays locked away for centuries, sometimes millennia. This is the biological pump, and without it, atmospheric CO2 would be roughly twice what it is today. And Earth would be 5 to 7 degrees Celsius warmer, not in 100 years. Now, already. The phytoplankton have been quietly running the thermostat that keeps your planet livable for over 2 billion years, honestly. Want to know the total biomass of all phytoplankton in the ocean right now? About 1 gigaton of carbon, which is less than 1% of all plant biomass on land. Trees outweigh them by 1,000 times. So how does 1% of the biomass do roughly the same amount of work? Turnover. A tree lives for centuries, but a phytoplankton cell lives for days, replicates, dies, sinks, and gets replaced by the next generation before you finished your coffee. The machine doesn't need mass, it needs speed. And it's been optimizing speed for 2.4 billion years. So what could possibly threaten a system that old? Temperature. Here's the mechanism. Phytoplankton need nutrients, nitrates, phosphates, iron, and these nutrients are concentrated in the cold, deep water below the surface. In a healthy ocean, currents and mixing bring that deep water up. The surface phytoplankton eat it, photosynthesize, die, sink, and the cycle runs. The pump runs, your planet breathes, naturally. But warm water is lighter than cold water. So what happens when the surface warms? And it is warming. It sits on top of the cold layer like oil on water. Stratification. The warm layer stops mixing with the nutrient-rich deep, and the surface becomes a biological desert, still wet, still blue, still looks like an ocean to you from above. But the base of the food chain is starving. Boyce et al. Nature, 2010, phytoplankton populations have declined by roughly 40% since 1950. That number is contested, with some studies saying less and some saying the methodology has gaps. Fair. But even the conservative estimates agree on the direction. Down. And the mechanism, stratification driven by warming, is not contested at all. The physics is straightforward. Warm water floats. Nutrients don't. And here's the chain that follows. Phytoplankton feeds zooplankton. Zooplankton feeds krill, and krill feeds fish, seabirds, and the largest animal that has ever lived, the blue whale. A 150-ton mammal that depends entirely on krill blooms in cold polar water. We covered the macro predator trap in the Megalodon video, and the same math applies. Remove the base and the pyramid doesn't restructure, it collapses. Not dramatically, not like a movie, just fewer cells, fewer krill, smaller calves, lower birth rates, death by subtraction. Now imagine you could go back 2.4 billion years. The ancestors of modern phytoplankton did something to this planet that was so extreme it nearly ended all existing life, the Great Oxidation Event. Cyanobacteria, early photosynthesizers, flooded the atmosphere with oxygen. And for the anaerobic organisms that ruled Earth at the time, oxygen was poison. The cyanobacteria didn't do this on purpose. They were just doing their job. The atmosphere filled with their waste product, and everything that couldn't handle it died. The first mass extinction event in Earth's history, caused by a cell doing photosynthesis. The irony is that the same chemical process that almost destroyed the planet 2.4 billion years ago is the same process keeping you alive today. Same mechanism, different chapter. And we're treating it like a footnote. The biggest organism on Earth isn't a whale, isn't a tree. It's a cloud of single cells nobody can see, doing work nobody assigned, holding up everything you depend on. Every second breath you take, you owe to a cell smaller than a pixel. It's been running the planet's atmosphere for 2.4 billion years. We found it in 1986. We've been quietly destabilizing it ever since. Information's free, can't put it back. Phytoplankton runs the ocean by being small and abundant. But the ocean has another trick, making animals work without parts they should need. There's a fish in Antarctica that runs without the one molecule every textbook says you need to be alive. No hemoglobin. Clear blood. 25 million years and counting. That's next Thursday.